Yeah, so there are a lot of ways to actually start a React app, and but the developers at React, they have like officially created a kind of bootstrapping CLI. Okay, so we are going to use that same thing. It's called as create React app. So if you are following along, you can also copy these commands into a terminal. And so what it basically does is it's going to create a React app for us, and you can also name whatever name you want to give it. So I'll just say it's a React example. Okay, it's very much generic, but let's start with this. So what it will do, it will like get all the dependencies, install them, and create a complete project for you. And it's going to take like few minutes, I guess, and not a lot, but still. But once it's done, then you will have all those things that you need to build a React app. So by React app, currently I mean a web app. It basically works on the browser, but you can extend your knowledge of React by learning React Native, which is very much similar. Just it adds some native components from Android, and you can use that to build Android or iOS apps, basically building hybrid apps. Uh, so okay, currently it's installing the dependencies. Till that time, okay, thanks for the time. Uh, okay, so it's done. It's done. Yeah. Okay. So it will be done in a second. Till that time, like you can write in the chat box. Have you ever worked with JavaScript already? So like, have you ever created a project or something with JavaScript? I see no responses. So you can at least write no if you haven't. So it's installed and it's in secure only HTML. Fine. Uh, we have this React example here, and if I cd into it, then yeah, so I'm here inside the folder that was created when I run create React app. I'll just open it on my Visual Studio Code. Okay, so here it is. We have you can check that we have these node modules, and these node modules is just all the dependencies that have been installed here. This public, I'll explain it in a bit. This basically contains all those public assets like the index.html file inside which our React app is going to run, and this is the place where we will be writing the code. As you can see, there is already some files created for us, but we are not going to like we are not going to use this. I'll just run this from my terminal. So uh, I'll just hit the command npm start. If you go to the package.json, you will see that there are some scripts which are already like created for you, and start is one of those scripts. So I'll just do npm start, and it's going to basically start a server, uh, a development server, and all these files like will come into action there, and you'll see a web page being loaded. Yeah, so here it is. uh, so it has this default thing, a kind of svg and stuff, and then we have this learn react link, but we don't want all these things, so we can just remove them from the app.js file. So this app.js file, this is not exactly the starting point. The actual starting point is this index.js. you'll see that here we have imported React and the React DOM, and what we do is we render this React DOM into an element which we fetch by get element by ID, and the ID should be root. So if you actually check in the public.html, public folder index.html, you'll find that there's this div, and it is going to have this ID of root. And what this index.js is going to do is going to take all those React components that you're going to make, and it's going to then attach it to the DOM here uh, in index.html, and hence you'll see that page. And so everything, whenever you are working with React, every component, basically app.js is kind of the root component, and you do everything inside this. So currently we have this, but we don't want this, so we can just basically remove everything from here, and it's the white screen. Also, we can, since this is not used now, so we can remove the logo, and you can also clean these things, but uh, let's keep it there. And okay, anyway, let's clean it up. So yes, you can delete it, and since you have deleted it, it's not required anymore. So you'll see that it's the blank screen that it had previously. So now what we are going to do is we are going to use some more additional packages. Uh, One package is this React router DOM, and uh, currently this site is actually the documentation of this package, and it's like all of the developers, they basically refer the documentation because in not in web, like in basically in any kind of development, uh, things change very much rapidly, and you can't memorize everything. So let's say even if you memorized every of it, which is highly unlikely, uh, but then too, it's going to change with time. Hence, people like to be updated and also to get to know more about the specific packages. People do use documentations, and we basically here at GDSC promote using the document. GDSC RAIT promote using the documentation. And okay, so this was the React router thing, and this is styled components that we will be using for styling our components. So let's just install this into our app. So I'll just open this terminal and yarn add styled components. And also React router DOM. So we are going to install these two dependencies, and if you see in a package.json, these will be added as dependencies here, and we will use them, like we'll use them to create stuff. Okay, so let's wait till it installs. Okay, so you'll see that we have this React router DOM and styled components being added into the package.json on their own. So now the first thing is you should know that what used to happen previously. By previously, I mean like 8, 9, when these dynamic frameworks didn't exist. So at that time, you had an index.html, you had a server, basically you had a server, and you always requested to that server, and that server returned an HTML file, and you displayed that HTML file onto the web. So every time like you click on something, it's going to completely reload and send a request to the server. The server would send a new HTML file, and then that new HTML file is displayed. And it also like lagged a lot of dynamic features, which we used to do with the help of JavaScript. But after the development of these frameworks like React, Angular, Vue, and there are many more, but these three are quite popular now. So after the development of these dynamic frameworks, they actually provided you a way that okay, whatever you have to do with front end, you can handle here, and you just have to like query, or basically you just have to call the REST API or the server for the data. So you're going to get the data from the server, and using that data, you will display things, or you will render things onto the browser. So hence, it means basically no reloading. So, well, there are a lot of architectures too, which is client-side rendering and server-side rendering. So, currently, what we are using is the client-side rendering, and in client-side rendering, everything is going to happen on the client side, or basically you can't preload a page. So, so basically, these routes that you see, it's on the front end itself. But what if I wanted to create more routes? So if I wanted to create more routes, I would actually create them using the React router DOM. So first I'll just import stuff from the React router DOM. Okay. So by the way, this autocomplete thing, this was my GitHub Copilot. I'll just turn it off uh, globally. Okay. So I just imported browser router, route, and link. Well, link is not required at this level. So these three, these these two stuff, and also we're going to need routes from React router DOM. And here we're just going to use these things that we have imported. Okay, so we created it's kind of a wrapper which is going to define that okay, we are going to have few routes. So we have this router. Inside this we have this routes, and for every route, like you can create a route. So route basically is going to have a component which is going to render. So let's say we'll fill in a component here, and but we haven't made it yet, so I'll just wait for a minute now. And it's going to have a path. So you have to like fill a path. So for home, I'll fill this, and I'll just create three more routes. Let's say about, and one more route. So we are not going to use it just yet. So let's comment it out. Okay. So if I go to the routes now, it's not going to do anything because we haven't passed the components. And well, for at the first place, we haven't even made the components. So let's create a file called as pages, and inside it, let's create few components. So one is home.js, then one is about.js. Okay. So these are basically the same components as this app thing. Okay, so we are going to create a similar thing. Export function. Okay, export default. And the name of the function. I guess I should like use a Copilot instead because it actually speeds up the development thing. Okay. So, or let's let it be. I'll explain it. So this is just the function, and it returns something. So currently we don't have a lot of data. Like we don't really have any data. So we'll just return this div. We just return this home, which is wrapped with this div. And here in the app trace, we import that component, which is home from. So this takes the relative route. So we have this pages folder. Inside this, we have this home. Now I can, since this is imported here, now I can add this as a component. Okay, so I have added this as a component. Now let's do the similar for about. For that, I'll just copy this and just change the names. Yeah. And I've changed the names, and now we have this thing here. We have to add an component for about page too. So just add about from this pages folder and the about page. So I guess our backend is still running. Okay, it does give us, okay, we have not provided this here. Now, okay, it's happy. So I'll just go here, reload this, and okay, so in the home tab, did we miss something? Need to add here. It's actually not required though. Okay, I guess the problem is that this takes this slash down. Okay, we have this browser router and route in these routes. Okay, that is fine. We wrap this with router. We have these routes. Kind of pass it here. So I guess I may be missing on something. Okay, till the so yeah, I'm definitely missing on something, and maybe for this time we can use the documentation. Okay, that's fine. It's fine. So maybe they have initialized it somewhere. They call it browser router, but we are using like as a assertion browser router as router. So hence we wrote router. So that's not the problem. If anybody of you wondered. So like it's almost the same. Okay, okay. I just use the wrong keyword. It's not component. It should be element. Okay, not for me. So now it should work fine, I guess. Yeah, just add this. Okay, it's still not happy, I guess. Yet again, I guess we are still missing on something. Okay, let's just refer to the documentation still. So we do have this path thing here, and then yep, it has all this stuff. Okay. So like if you actually look at here, it basically in the element thing, it invokes it up. And what we are doing is we are passing it without invoking, but even that should have been worked. Yeah, so that was the problem. So we were just referring the name of that element, but it actually expected us to invoke it up. So we do have this about and this home page here. Okay, so at least we got it running. That's fine. So this was just to demonstrate that how the routing in React works. So we were using this React router DOM, and we imported some stuff from the React router DOM and then made it run here. And so it's actually the version 6. I'm quite used to the version 5, but then too, why am I explaining this? Okay, that's fine. I just want you to think I'm not dumb. Okay, so let's move on. So here at home, at this component which is home, and at this component which is about, currently we are not displaying anything, and we are not using that dynamic advantage of React that it offers. So what we are trying to do today is we are going to use this free API, which is the Cocktail DB. Okay, and it offers us like few API endpoints, and it's going to, whenever you hit to these endpoints, you're going to get some data, and we just want to display that data onto our web page or onto our app. And we also want to have a search bar which basically searches for any drink or something, and then we might also get that. So let's just work on that. So currently this is the API endpoint which returns the different types of cocktails based on the starting letter, which in this case is V. So we'll use this same thing. Either we can use V or any other letter. I'm not using some randomly generated uh, cocktail suggestions because it costs $2, I guess. That's why. So we'll just work our way out with this. So I'll just copy this URL. So what we want to do is we just want to get all the data from this URL, which is here in this JSON format, and display it onto our web page. So before doing that, let's just first of all get the data and display it in our console here. Okay, so how do we do that? So we use a hook which is use effect. What this use effect expects is this is going to expect a function that is going to run every time the DOM mounted. Okay, function that is going to execute every time the DOM mounted, or every time this particular component rendered. Okay, so in use effect, I'll just show you an example of this. So I'm using arrow functions here, and it also takes a dependency array. Let's just remove this dependency array, this one. So here, if I say console.log something like hello or something, and if you come here, you'll see that there's this hello printed here from home.js line number 6. Because every time this is mounted, a hello will be printed. So here, what we want to do is, whenever this component is rendered, we want to get some data and then display that data into this component. And before that, we'll just get the data and display it into our console. Okay, so fine. Yes, I copied the URL again. Okay, I'll just make a constant named as URL. So to query any link, or basically to query any REST API, you call that API using a client, like it can be Axios or anything. But whenever you are using it on the web browser, I personally prefer to use fetch. Fetch is a kind of function which is already implemented in JavaScript, which gives you, which can be used to fetch a REST API. So how that is used, we basically provide fetch, and then in fetch you have to pass the URL. And since this is an asynchronous function, what do I mean by asynchronous? Basically, whenever I call this function, it is going to take some amount of time to execute this function, or basically to get the result out of this function, and I'm not sure when the execution will be complete. So if I wait for this, then it's obviously going to make the program not so efficient, because then you will be waiting for such a synchronous request at a lot of places, uh, and it would turn out that you are not really getting any of it executed. So for that, we have these asynchronous function which basically takes some time to execute, and you don't exactly know that when the execution would be complete. uh, at that time, what we can use two things. There's this async await syntax, which basically can be used to wait for a function, like create a function, say that it's async, and then wait for a particular line inside that function to get executed, or else you can just use dot then. So what do I mean by this is, whenever you are done fetching and you have caught the response, or basically the execution of this is completed, then do this. So here I'm going to get a response, and I want to convert that response into JSON. So I do response.json. Now why JSON? Because this is JavaScript object notation, and it comes in handy to use while you are working on any JavaScript. Not only JavaScript, but when you're working on almost any frontend. And then part 10, this is finally the data that we received. So console.log data. So I will just console this data out here. So if I go here, you'll see that I get this 13 array something, and if I expand it, then you'll see that it contains all those information, which is very much similar to this, because it's exactly that. Okay, but we don't want this to display on our console, right? We want to display this onto our component, right? So for that, we first need to store this thing into something. And in React, if you have to store something inside a component, you generally use states. So how do you use states? So you can define a variable. Let's say this is drinks, and then a function. Okay, we have a hook called as useState. We have a hook called as useState, which is provided by React, and what it does, it basically returns uh, the parameter here. It can be anything, like you can pass any value here, and that would be the initial value of this drinks. And it also provides you a function which is setDrinks. So if you want to update this particular variable, you can use this setDrinks here to update it anytime. So I'm just using this drinks and setDrinks, and I'm initializing it with an empty array. And simple as that. I just want to go to the data, and instead of doing a console.log, I'll just want to set drinks as this data. Okay, so now this drinks would have this data, which is fetched from this URL, or simply say whatever we console.log here. Now that is stored into a state. But yet again, since we have this state, but we want to display something from that, right? And what is this actually? This is actually a array of all the data which is stored in drinks. So to display it onto a DOM, we need to convert it into we need to like display it onto the DOM. Before that, let's say I have this div and div, and I want to display some dynamic data here. What should I do to display dynamic data here? For that, I'll just very quickly create another state, which is this. And initialize it 1. So this is basically a JavaScript variable which is initialized with 1, and it also returns function which can be used to basically update that, update this variable. And if I want to, like, let's say if I want to display this here, if I write temp, this would be like interpreted as if it was a simple kind of text. Then how do I display a variable? Basically what I want to do is I want to display the value which is stored inside this variable. In this case, this is 1. So for that, we use curly braces, and inside the curly braces, you can write any JavaScript statement, and that would be executed, and the evaluation of that statement would be then printed. So now if you see, it is going to print 1. So okay, let's just before doing anything else, let's just create a small example, which is I'll just create a button here so that you get familiar with how to use states. So I've created this button here, and I'll just name this button something. Click me. Okay. So here, this is 1, and this is click me. I'll just zoom it out. Okay. So this is 1. This is click me. We are not doing styles here. We'll do it in a minute. So this is temp. This is click me, and this is just for you to know that how do you handle states and how states are managed in React. So what I want to do is I'll just pass in an event handler, which in this case is click. So whenever this button is clicked, I want to do something, and I can pass a function here, which is handle click. Okay, but now this complains that handle click is not defined. So for that, you have to like define a function which is handle click. Okay, and it is going to take a event object. Well, in this case we are not using it, but okay, let's say it takes an event object, and what we want to do is we want to set temp to some other value here. So we set temp to some other value. Let's say we set temp to this value, okay, whatever that is. So what this will do, that whenever this button is clicked, this function is going to run, and then we do set temp to this particular value, and hence it is expected that this should change, and this is exactly what happens, because this is how React is going to react onto this, because it sees that okay, a state has been changed. So if a state has been changed, I need to re-render my component, and whatever changes are being done, that hence reflect onto the web page. Okay, so let's just go back to what we were doing previously. So this was just for the demonstration how state works. Now let's just go back to what we were doing previously. So here, till this point, what is happening? I'm fetching that URL, and I'm getting that result. I'm getting the result and storing that into set, using set rings. I'm storing that into a rings variable, right? And I can't just simply write drinks here so that it would be printed because it's not a simple value, it's an object. So in this case, what we do is, since it's an array type object, we map it, and this map is a higher order function which can be operated on arrays. It basically takes the function, and using that function, it's going to modify all the elements inside the array and return a new array. Okay, so I'll just do drinks.map, and just I'll pass item and also the index. Okay, in our case, index is not needed, so I'll just pass item. And after that, I just want this to return item dot, let's say from this thing, item. So where's the name? Okay, I guess this is the name, not str drink. So I'll just copy this variable and we want to return item dot this thing without this semicolon. So what this is going to do is this is going to return for every 13 of that drinks. This is going to return a p tag which is going to contain item.str drink there. So if I come here to my okay, so I guess I messed up, but because this set drinks is sorry, this data that is returned is not an array. I'll just have a look at it once. So okay, I'll also have to comment this out. Okay, so it returns an object and that object has drinks property. So basically if I console.log data.drinks, then I'm going to get the pure array, which is this 13. Okay, so we have to set drinks to this value. So here we have data drinks, and now this should hopefully work. Like we get these names of these 13 things here. Okay, so now we just don't want to display the names because we have a lot of information here. So we'll just use it and we'll also start designing the component in a more better way. So how do we, like, not designing, styling the component in a better way? So how do we style the component? So I've installed a library called as styled components. Well, you can also use CSS by and add class names, but I prefer style components, so let's just use that for this particular session. Okay, so let's say I just want to create a kind of wrapper, and that is nothing but style, and this auto imported from style components, style.div, and you can here write all the styles that you want. So what if I write background, and this is the CSS style section. So this is style.div, and this particular div, which is named as wrapper, is going to contain these styles, but I haven't used this wrapper. So instead of this div, I'll just replace it with wrapper and even the closing. So now you'll see that okay, it has this red color thing. Okay. Okay, so what I was doing was I basically kept this margin as 0, padding as 0, and box sizing as border box. Why this? So that I don't get additional margin and padding which I had previously. So see this whitish, not whitish, it's this exactly white. This white padding that I have, I don't want that. And also box sizing border box means that if you say a box is 10 pixels, then you want that box to be 10 pixels. If you don't set this as border box, then what happens? It would contain the size of the content, then it would add up the padding, and then it would add up the margin. But if you set this as border box and you set your like size of the box or size of that component to be something around 100 pixels, then it would be 100 pixels after calculating the margin and padding and everything. It would adjust in a particular way. Okay, so now this is red, but we don't want that. What we want instead is this should be, first let's give this some height of something, like not a height but a main height. Let's just forget about it because the height would be like, obviously it would grow up depending on what is the value. So So this was to demonstrate that how to use styled components here. Let's just keep it here for a while, and before that, let's just start developing, or let's just start styling something else. So we are going to create a card-like structure for us, which is going to have a height of 100 pixels and a width of 100 pixels. Okay, and then let's say it's not 100, but let's make it a bit big, 200 and 200. Let's say the background is yellow. Okay, so nothing happens because I haven't used card yet. So if I place this into, like if I replace this by card, you'll see that okay, we got these boxes, but you don't want them to look like this. So in the parent, I'll just say we'll say this to display grid, so that would like display it as a grid, and one single row we want let's say three columns, let's say 4 columns. Okay, so for that you say grid uh, template columns. Okay, I actually realized I'm wasting a lot of time writing the styles again, so I'll just take help of the Github program. Grid template columns, and I'll just send, like I'll just pass in 4 uh, FR unit, or basically 4 fraction units. So what this will do, it would divide the space in equally to like 4 different columns, and it's responsive on its own. Okay, so now we have a grid looking structure, which is not so pleasing, obviously. So for that, you can have a grid gap. So I just call it gap, and you can kind of give a gap of like 20 pixels. So there's a gap between these rows. Let's say not 20 pixels, but let's just use some relative attributes, which is 1 REMH. Okay, so we have this uh, gaps now. Okay, now after this, we we can also display not just the name but also an image. We can also display an image, right? Because we have this str drink thumb thing. So for that, let's just in our card we can add a few more things here. So in our card, let's say this is just the card title. Okay, but not the card title, just the title would work. Okay, so now this thing doesn't know about title, so we can define that too. So this is style.h1. Can have this as text align center, and then okay, I guess this text align center works for us for the title. And we also want to display the image. So before the title, we'll also display image here. Let's say this is image, card image. Now this card image would be xstyle.img. Okay, so I can give it a height of, let's say, 70% of the card, and width of again 70% of the card. so it would be like a square, and a margin of auto so that it's in the center. But here in the source, we need to pass item dot the property name, which is this. Okay, item dot this property name, and also an alt text if this is not rendered. So the alt text in our case, let's just put it as item name. So now if we go to the application, I will see that okay, we do have this uh, images here, and the typography is not good, not at all good. So let's just make this h3 text align center. Okay, looks a bit better when compared. Okay, so basically have these things, and at the same time I just want to get rid of this yellow color, this, and even this red color background. Instead we can just add a box shadow, right? So box shadow of uh, so you can pass in what offset you want to give, and a blur radius, sorry, an x and y offset and a blur radius. You can have this 3 pixels and RGBA as 0,0,0, which is basically black, and then this is this opacity thing, and just keep it 0.1. And if you have a closer look, you'll see that there's this uh, shadow here. Okay, and then it's not clearly visible, so let's make it a bit darker. Okay, now it's a lot darker. You can experiment with the values based on whatever you like. I guess this was the right one. Okay, so, and I guess since we already know that this is 200 pixels, we don't even want to give this like 70%. We can give this 150 pixels too. Well, that's not going to make any difference though. So let's just still give it 140 pixels. Okay, so here we got this, and before that, if we expand this completely, this looks a bit ugly. So for that, we go to the wrapper and we set the width of this wrapper to like the 80% of this thing. And at the same time, okay, there's one thing that I'm missing. This margin, because then this is applied everywhere. And okay, so let's go to home. Pass a margin of auto, and that would be like centered here, and it's like 80% of the width. So if we reduce the width, it would always take like 80% of it. But after a time, okay, we'll just check out the media queries later. Currently we are just focusing on more of the React stuff. Okay, so we have this thing, this images and this name and stuff. Okay, now what I want to do is, like, whenever I click on this particular whenever I click on this particular name of this cocktail, I want this app to redirect to a completely new page, and there I just want more information about this particular drink. Okay, so how do we do that? So now we come back and we create a route, which is this, and we say this is nothing but cocktails and something. And we also pass a route parameter, which is this ID. Okay, and we create an element here. I'll just explain you why I'm using this ID just in a moment. Okay, so we haven't created a component for this, so let's just first create a component. So let's say drinks.page.js, and I'll just use this about thing. Okay, so currently it looks a bit raw, but if time permits, we'll try to make it more cleaner. What I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to cover most of the functionalities which were meant to be covered into this session. Okay, so that's why I'm skipping a bit on the styles so that I don't waste a lot of time there. So this is export default about, and stuff that we say this drinks page. Okay, and we will just use this component here. Okay, I'll just import it. This drinks page component and here. So now if I go to this route, basically slash drinks slash drinks slash, let's say 1221 or something. Okay. Okay, my bad. Because the route was cocktails and I tried drinks. Let's make it drinks so that we don't confuse it. So now we have this drinks here. Okay. Yeah. So what happens that this route expects a parameter here. So if I pass 232 whatever parameter, like I can write anything here, and if I hit enter, it brings me to this particular route. So, but eventually what I want to do is I want to get this thing, or I want to get this parameter that is passed and use it in my component. So how do I do that? So if I want to do that, and like, there are a lot of ways, but here, sorry, but here in our case, since we are using React Router DOM, and because of that, we get a hook which is use params from the React Router, and that can be used here. Constant ID is equal to use params here, and if since I've got this ID, I'll also display it. So whatever this thing is, SDSD, or okay, let's say if I hit 1, it is going to print drinks slash 1. Okay, so why do I need that? Because when I'm on this home page, I'll click on some name, and when I click on some name, I'll just redirect this thing to a new page along with the ID of this drink. And using that ID, I can call the API here and get more information about that particular drink. So let's just have, okay, look full cocktail details by the ID. So I'll just need this URL. I'll just copy this URL. So for example, if you want to check what kind of data we are getting, you'll see that we are not getting an, okay, we do get kind of an array, but it's like only one element, and that is with that particular ID. Okay, so and it has some descriptions and instructions and stuff, and we will eventually like display those two. Now let's complete the first part, which is redirecting to that page. So for that we use link, which is also part of React Router DOM, and this link will wrap this title. Now what this needs is a to function, basically the URL to which you want to pass it. So in our case, it's in drinks slash. Now, if I say it's like 56 or something, and if I save it here, you come here, click on Vesper, it says drinks 56 because it passed 56. But for every drink, the ID will be unique, and hence I'll use that ID here. So let's just check what is the name of that property. Which, okay, so this is ID drink. So what I'll do is I'll redirect it to item dot the ID drink. So now if I go back to the app, click on it. So it's basically this 17218 is actually the ID of the drink. So this is the first part that we have completed, and let's move on to the next part, which is the drinks page. Okay. So here, first of all, I want the full details about that drink. And as we have seen it in the other component, the home component, that whenever we want to fetch some data, we actually use this use effect hook. And we are going to do similar here. And we basically use this ID to fetch things. Okay, let me just copy this URL again. Okay, so here now I can also store this URL here, but let's just use it directly. Store this URL in a constant, but we can even use it directly. So everything else is going to be constant, but this I is equal to something. This number is going to change. So as we did in the previous component where these things are constant, and we use a template string and replaced the last thing with this item.id drink. So basically this complete thing here will be replaced by the value of this item.drink. Okay? I hope you understand that. So here too, where I have this I'll just pass this ID, which I get from the parameters. And then again, since this is fetch, I'll use dot then. Like you can also use it as this, even that's fine, and it's a bit more good looking. Dot then, and we get the data. I'll just console.log this data again, and we'll just go to the page. Cheers. Let's go back. Open up the console. Here, and if I click on anything, you'll see that I have this object drinks one stuff, which is 17218, and this is exactly the thing here. Now, since we already have the data, it's time to display that data too. So how do we display that data again? We have to create a state here. So let's say constant, and we say drink. Okay, drink set drink, and initially that should be an empty object. And when we get this console.log data, this is this object dot drinks dot first element. Okay, so data dot drinks, which is an array, and the first element of this array is actually what we want. It's actually what we desire. Okay, so this thing, this object, and we are going to set this as drink, because drink is the state here. Now again, we can display stuff here. So let's just go start with displaying it. Okay, I'll come back to the styling a bit later. Here, I'll just say this is nothing but drink dot the name of the drink, which I forgot the name of the property, which is this. Okay, sorry, this. I guess this is the same here too. Yeah, so it's more or less same. So this displays me Vesper, or okay. Now, not only just the details, I want to display also, like not only just the name, but I also want to display all the other details that we get here. Okay, so I'll just wrap this into an H1 so it's a bit bigger in size. Okay, super. And below this we'll just display the image. I'll just display the image here. Okay. So yep, it's a bit bigger, and now we can actually start styling this. So just go. First of all, let's style the header, which is constant header is equal to style dot h1, which is the heading that we have. Okay, again we make sure you import style from the style components. And, okay, so style.h1, and we'll just have a text align of center 11, just that's fine. Text align center, it would just hop onto the center. Okay, it is not because we are not using header. Silly mistakes a lot today. Okay. Vesper. Now we want to like resize the image to something more sensible. So let's say this is name of an image, style the image, width is equal to reasonable width, which is 300 pixels, height is equal to 300 pixels, and we'll just use it here in place of image. Okay. Now also I'll just create one details wrapper. Just style.div, and yeah, this contains a display flex. Details wrapper. So this has this thing, and we also want to display some details here. Before that, I'll just also define one more thing, which is the wrapper, which is the parent wrapper. Okay. I want this width to be 80% or let's say 60%, so that it's more saturated in the middle. Okay, so this is the wrapper. Okay, now the size has been decreased, but it's not in the middle. So let's just add a margin auto, and it would just come into the middle. And we can also give it a fixed width if we want, so that if we resize the windows, then it's same, but let's just keep it 60 for now. Okay. So if you just want to like know how big that is, it's something that I want to know. You'll see that okay, this is the 60% of this thing, and if you expand, this is just going to be going away. I guess we can do it 70, and that would be better. Okay, gives more space. Now I'll just comment this out. Okay, so we got this name, we got this image, and we also want to display some more stuff, that is this instruction. Okay, so we want to have this instruction being displayed onto a page too. Like there are more than one instructions, but let's just say we want to display this particular instruction. So inside the details wrapper, I'll just have another div and create a p tag, and here I'll just paste doing that particular instruction. And if you go back, you'll see that okay, we do have this instructions here. Uh, then we can, I guess, we can also display the rest of them too. So let's just go on quickly display all of them. Name of this sections ID. Okay, so there are like these are the thing, but this looks very ugly. So let's just fix that first and just define something for us. Okay, let me also show you that you can also use CSS to do these, uh, like, and also a mix of both. Well, that is not recommended because then you would be like jumping around just to get that where these styles are being written. So either stick to this or that. Okay, that's completely on you. But let's say I want to give a class name to this. That is nothing but details wrapper. So this is to demonstrate that you can also use CSS. So if I come here and say details wrapper, this is the index.css file. Okay. Okay, we don't want all this. This details wrapper. Let me just get rid of this. And then we like want to give a padding of 100. Okay. Then you'll see that we got this space around more like a bit more space. We can also make it do so that it's more sophisticated. So basically this is how we displayed the data. So if we, since this is dynamic, if I go back to home, I click on any other drink, it would take me to a new page, and then I'll see the details of that particular drink. Okay, so it can be any drink, but I'll get an image, I get the name, I get the description for that thing, and this is how dynamic that is. But you might say, okay, you are actually switching pages, and you just told that we would just get rid of that reload thing. So if you focus on this, you'll see that when I'm switching, it's not reloading, right? Because it's not, because what happens is in case of React, whenever you uh, try to change the route, okay, whenever you try to change the route from one component to another, from one page to another, that route is not sent to any server. It's actually sent to this React server, which is here. And that React server, since it knows that everything is on the front end self, that is intercepted by React, and hence you move on to the new page and there's no reload. So it feels more like an app, and maybe that's why they call it app. I don't know. Mm. Okay, so this was the basic thing. Now we can, if we have few minutes more, so we can actually style it uh, in a more better way. And I just realized that we can have a search thing, okay, and also a navbar. So let's just first do the navbar. So where do you want this navbar to? You want this navbar to be on the top, but at the same time you want that navbar to be in every single page. So if I go into this component and let's say I uh, create a nav, okay, let's say I create a nav. I'll just write some styles, constant navbar equal to style.div, this, and give it a height of 10 vh. The width is going to be full, so okay. Just give it a background of some color. Let's say let's just with cyan. Okay, and if I use that, and if I use that here, you'll see. Okay, so this was a great thing. So this is not the right place to do this. It should be like outside this grid stuff. Now, I hope you know why this happened, because this wrapper has this display grid. So whatever goes inside this, it tends to be displayed as a grid itself, and it's going to get like 4 equal parts. Like out of 4 equal parts, it's going to get 1 part as the width. So that's why we like got a misplaced navbar. So let's just move it a bit up the hierarchy and mat it. So okay, this should be a closing tab. So now you see that we get it's not a pure nav bar, but a kind of a nav bar. And if I click on this, that disappeared, because that is defined onto this home component only. But we want this nav bar to be as like to be on every single page. So what you do in such cases is you declare that onto this route level thing, so that the route changes for these components, but this is constant every time because it's out of this router, right? So I'll just bring those styles of navbar here onto this level, and then we okay, make sure you import styled wherever you use it. So now this is on every page. Okay, a lot of people, like, what they do is they create a component. So this is create a component. So what they do is they create a layout component, and inside that layout component they have this nav bar, and everything else is actually the child of that layout component. Well, people don't generally do this in case of um, people don't really do this in case of create React app, like when the project is bootstrap with create React app. But if you see a Next.js project, now Next.js is actually a framework of React, framework for React. And if you use Next.js, that's generally how people deal with it. They, because it has a bit of like some policies regarding the different pages and the URLs, the name of the file and everything is also considered. Okay, let's not move there. So we have this navbar, or this ugly looking something at this position here. Okay, okay, that's fine. Now let's just, instead of having this top, just here go with body and padding. So at least for the body, it's good, right? Now it looks a bit better. Now, why this happened, why this changed is because previously we were using star, and star means all. Okay, if you have ever learned about regular expressions, that this thing is like same there too. Star means all. So basically, what star does is it takes all the elements, all the HTML elements, and applies this styles. But we just want this to be on the root level, which is on the body. Okay, and we can have star box sizing here, because that makes sense, right? For every element you want the box sizing to be water box, but not the margin and padding to be 0. You want that, you want to set that on your own, right? So now it's still good. So we have this thing, but on a navbar we generally have some links. So we can add few links here, and I guess this is the right time when we should actually create a new component for navbar. And you should generally like keep your code very much modular as possible. It would be beneficial when you debug some things, debug some problem. So in our case, now we want to create a new component for navbar. We'll just do export default function navbar, and here I'll just return the navbar or a styled div which is named as navbar. Okay. Now you can also call this as a wrapper or something, like any name you want to give. Now for me it makes sense to call it wrapper because navbar is something which is already defined, and the wrapper basically means a wrapper for this navbar or inside this navbar to be very precise. And this would contain the exact styles as these. So I'll just use this. Okay, now since style is not used here, we can remove. Okay, so gather snapbar, I'll just change it to wrapper. Okay, and now I can also pass in wrapper. Now if there's no children to a particular React component, or sorry, a particular HTML element, you can also have this slash at the ending, and actually knows on its own. Now, why this is not displayed? Because this navbar is not yet imported here. So I'll just import it as a component. Import navbar, and then that navbar will be used here. Okay, navbar.js doesn't match. Okay. Okay, the reason is I misspelled the name navbar. Here it's capital B, but the actual file name is small. Okay, now I'll just reload it, and this is fine. Okay, so we got this navbar, and what we wanted to do is we wanted to display some links. So we just want to display we just want to display two links. Okay, those are home, and now we can just those are, one goes to home, which is just this slash because that means nothing, and that is a path for home, and I'll just name it home, and one would go to about. The same, just two slash about. Now I guess this red is we get this red because it expects a link to be imported, and also okay, and also what a lot of people do is they actually put this into an A tag because that is more readable for SEO, mostly the search engine. Okay, maybe only in the Okay, yeah, this is the problem that we face, and that is since okay, I just made a mistake. This should have been inside the router but above the routes. Okay, I hope you get why. Because if it's not inside the router, then how do we even access these particular thing like link? And that's exactly what the error was showing up. Let's just repeat that mistake so that okay. So you'll get an error which is used href because maybe this is the hook which is used uh, in the like in the implementation of this link component. This particular link component can be used only in the context of a router component. So it kind of expects that it's quite obvious that it would expect you uh, to use all these functionalities inside a router, wrapped inside a router only. And we'll just make it something which is global to all these routes, but inside the router. Okay, that's fine. And now if we change it, we still have the same thing. And you will see that we get this home and about printed here. And if I change it, it's going to like change the route. We can design it a bit so that it looks a bit better. So let's just design it, and I guess we are already past the time and we can end it. So the link wrapper style.link. Okay, this is also a way of using it. Basically, you kind of provide a higher order function, which or a higher order component that wraps this link, and that can be used. But okay, let's say we just want to create a wrapper for both of these links. So that would have been the case if I wanted to decorate this home uh, text. Okay, so just give it a div, give it a width of let's say 400 pixels. 400 is too much. 200 pixels, and yeah, 200 pixels, and the height of 10 VH, which is basically height of 100% even works. There's this link wrapper, and inside this link wrapper we pass on both of these links. And you just have a display of flags and justify the contents to be spaced around, yeah, and align items to the center so that it looks a bit cleaner. So if I go to about, this is the about page, and maybe we can just write something in the about page. Okay, well, that's not of importance though. Let it be. We'll just skip it out. So we have this home. We got these drinks, and if we click on any drink, it directs us to a page where we have all these details, like more details about this. We can also show more details because we have a ton of attributes. For single, we have a ton of attributes here, and there are some ingredients and stuff which can also be shown. And and also I guess this can be styled in a more better way so that it looks a bit more nicer. But at the end, I guess you at least came to know about the functionalities and learned about the React router as well as the styled components, as well as the basics of React, some hooks. So I guess we can end it. If you have any questions, you can ask it now in the chat or even unmute.